Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are on episode 58, and today we're going to be talking about clear the clutter, clear your mind. And I'm
Yes.
going to start out by turning it over to Jamie.
Yes. Thank you, Paige. Thank you. Thank you. This is a very interesting topic. Today, we're talking about clutter. And you might ask, why would we choose the topic of clutter for a food addiction recovery
Mhm.
podcast? Well, we have a host of reasons, but first, it's important to emphasize that clutter and mental well-being are firmly connected. And we're going to get into why and how that works in a minute. But secondly, our goal is to make sure that you, by the time you finish this episode, leave an organizational genius. That is our goal. So prepare to free up your mind and go to the next level with us.
That sounds perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about how clutter and mental health are connected. While clutter is sometimes associated with creativity or being right-brained, you know those creative types that everything's a mess. They're a whirling dervish, but they seem to find things, but they're super creative. So oftentimes it's associated with creativity. It can also be overwhelming to our stress pathways, especially if it gets out of hand. If clutter interferes with our ability to function effectively in daily life, we need to take an honest look at how we are organized, how we are organizing things around us.
Mhm. Absolutely. So let's start off with a few questions. First, this is really just sort of a maybe a self-assessment, a little bit of some mirror gazing on your part. So, do you dig through piles of clothes to find the shirt you want to wear for the day?
Mhm.
Next question, do your dishes pile up in the sink, forcing you to use chopsticks and a paper towel to eat dinner? Third question, when you leave the house, do you struggle to find your keys and purse as you walk out the door? Next question. Maybe you can't open a closet or spare bedroom door in your home because there's so many boxes of things in the way.
Mhm.
So, if any of these things sounded familiar, we encourage you to keep listening.
Jamie, I'd love to hear where you are on all of this. I think I already know just by the things that I know about you. I probably don't even need to ask, but I will tell you I am an organizational freak. I think you know that about me. And I don't think I have ever lost my car keys. I always bring them in. And what I do is it's so simple. I put them in the exact same place that they are always in. There's a hook on the side of my microwave, and I have hooks lined up inside of one of my cabinets with a row of keys where we store everything from, like my mother's house, my son's house, my daughter's house, or a storage unit, things like that. And they're all labeled and they just go back exactly into that same place. And my car key literally is on the exact same hook that it is always on. And you know what? Never have lost keys. So I have had a family member who lost their keys, I mean, every other day. It was infuriating living with this person. The whole family had to pay when this person was in crisis because, as you know, anybody listening knows when one person is in crisis in the house, everybody's involved. And so it's very difficult to live with people who live in that level of chaos on at all times. Or should I say, um, especially living with people like that, if you are an organized person, it's very difficult. By the way, that person was always late as well. So, in addition to not being able to find their keys, it was always in a panic, a frantic, frenetic, psychotic state when we're trying to rush out the door and then we have to stop what we're doing. And it's just a pit in my gut, even thinking back to those
Yeah.
times. But I just don't like to be set up to be in that disorganized state of mind.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be hard. I too had a family member in my life for many years who was disorganized, and every time we would try to go anywhere or do anything, there was always something forgotten, always something left behind, either when he was leaving or when we were leaving. Keys lost, things
Right.
lost, just not organized, um, and that is just it would drive me crazy because I didn't know how to, because I grew up in a very organized home. So, and I grew up with parents who definitely had faults overall, but organization was not one of them.
Mm,
So, they were both pretty organized people.
mhm.
So, my tolerance level for people who walk out of the house forgetting things repeatedly. I'm not saying, hey, it happens. Our mind is on
Right.
something else. We're human. I'm not
Mm,
saying that we're human. I'm saying every single time there was some kind of chaos around what was lost, what was forgotten, or something that had to be rescheduled because what was needed was forgotten at home.
mhm. Exactly.
Um, I grew up and, really organizing um, everything. I love it. I love organizing. I love reorganizing. It's like what I do in my spare time. Like if you ever wonder what Jamie does when she's bored, it's organize something.
I've told a story about, I think it might have been my 40th birthday. It was a Friday night. I was home. I climbed a mountain that day. Everybody else had gone out to eat. And somehow I ended up on the phone with Jamie and several, half the country away. And I asking her what she was doing. She's like, "Oh, I just put your phone on FaceTime. I've got to show you my cupboards. What I've just everything's in rows and it's alphabetized. And I'm like, ooh, that is like the best birthday present I could have ever gotten. Just looking at that stuff just makes me salivate.
It was
And
my spice cabinet and
yeah,
it was
your
a
spice
work of
cabinet. You
art. It
remember
really
that?
was a
Uh-huh.
work of art. I think we should make that maybe we should make that a Facebook post when we release this episode so
Oh,
people can
okay.
take pictures
Yeah. And
of
your
my
refrigerator too. Works of art in your refrigerator.
yes, I do enjoy and I do enjoy my pantry. Yes. My pantry in Texas is an organized den of calm. New Jersey is not quite there. I don't have the same space in New
Hmm.
Jersey that I have in Texas. So it is what it is in Jersey. It's certainly organized, but it's not Texas organized.
Hmm. Well, you might tell yourself, I'll declutter eventually, but time keeps passing and your home, office, or car is still filled to the brim with stuff. I try not to be obvious if I'm getting into someone else's car that is filled with trash and I'm looking around, there's napkins, there's empty water bottles, there's leftover receipts. I mean, I'm just thinking, how can you stand pick up that empty water bottle and throw it away. Wouldn't you rather have it in the trash than in your car? But I digress a little bit. I just don't understand how people don't see it and how it doesn't agitate them like it does me internally. If any of this resonates with you, you're probably not alone, but many people don't realize the connection between clutter and mental health. So that is what we are here to address today. And before we start, I already know I get nervous when things are out of order, as I've said, and I start getting the jitters on the inside. I can't relax, and I certainly can't go to bed with dishes in the sink. I had a family member who we had had a big family gathering. Kitchen looked like a bomb went off, and she's like, I'll get it in the morning. I'm like, I can't hardly breathe. Nobody leave the room. How could you just go in there and lay your head down on your pillow knowing there's chaos everywhere? But the idea of getting up and starting your day like that
Yes.
blows my mind. So you want to weigh in on this, Jamie?
Yeah.
Where do you stand on, do you have a physical reaction when things are out? Do you feel it on the inside?
I do, and here's the thing. So one thing I'll say about like I have I've had, parties, get-togethers, family events where it was on a Sunday. And if I can't make it earlier in the day, but
Mm-hmm.
I can get everything cleaned up for Monday morning, or for the next morning, what I will do is I'll make sure if it's that big of a family gathering or a gathering, I'll have it on a Friday or Saturday, so that if it's late, I can put everything sort of in order, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I can at least get a load in the dishwasher, so that
Yes.
when I hit the ground, I set myself up for success. It might not be perfect if it's a big shindig, but at
Mm-hmm.
least I'll set myself up for success so I can hit the ground running when I wake up the next day.
Right.
But I had members of my family for many years, um, and they were very cluttered people. And I just did not understand it. I didn't understand how they found anything. I didn't understand how they could like live healthfully in that kind of home. I didn't understand, um, how they really were efficient and found anything. But I was raised by, a very obsessive compulsive father and a mom who was very, very focused on people pleasing. So she was more worried about what other people thought of her than she was about what she thought of her. So everything was for other people's eyes. So everything had to be presentable, was her favorite phrase or
Mhm.
word. So again, I grew up that way, and I didn't understand that there's a spectrum, right? Like anything, there are people that are extreme end, like my dad and my mom were in some ways, and then there's other people that are on the opposite end where they're just like, who cares and just clutter everywhere. And then there's people in the middle that have periods of clutter depending on an event or a week that gets out of hand. And then there's others that come right back over that are like, okay, now I've cleaned that up and now I'm back on track. So again, it's I guess it's where we land on that spectrum consistently that I think will tell us what our clutter habits are. So accumulating a few extra possessions might not seem like a big deal. Clutter actually can have a negative impact on our mental health. Clutter can increase stress levels, make it difficult to
Mhm.
focus, and take a toll on relationships.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
word clutter refers to items that are strewn about in a disorganized fashion. In general, clutter is a collection of items that people accumulate in their homes and don't necessarily use, but hold on to anyway. That's a very interesting definition.
I will admit I have a lot of stuff in my house, but it's organized stuff, is what I like to say. I refer to them as vignettes around my house versus clutter. Do that just to make myself feel better.
That works. That works. And I will say that um, when I am in a cluttered home, I notice that I feel very discombobulated and very overwhelmed and like so
Mhm.
the, the fun thing is I share a home now with somebody who is very much that way, very cluttered. There's really no rhyme or reason to the way that stuff is kept. It's not a primary family member because I know in my inner circle I cannot have those people around me. I've had people in my inner circle around me that are cluttered, and it was like oil and water. We just did not mix. It was very stressful. But this person is in my home, and I they have a lot of the space of the home, and it is filled with things that they don't use. I mean, just filled. And there's, from papers to things in the garage to closets that are just overflowing. And so we are at the point where my husband and I are at the point where, we're having to have conversations and say, you got to get it out. Like, you got to get this stuff out. We have to do it in stages because this
Sure.
person is older and has some, you know, we just don't know what they want to keep and what they
Mhm.
have. This person has, I would say, unrealistic attachments to things
Yeah.
and thinks that if there's a dime of monetary value to it, that it can be sold, and he would like to sell it,
Mhm.
which of course falls to my husband and I to try to figure out, is this something that can be sold? How do we sell it? Who sells it? I mean, it's like insane. So there's a lot of garage sales, there's a lot of yard sales, there's a lot of auctions, there's a lot of it's crazy. So I think that clutter can lead to this unhealthy attachment to
Mhm.
things, right? It's driven by an unhealthy attachment to things, and it leads us to more of it. So to further help us see where we might make improvements, we're going to ask you a few more questions. So here's another self-assessment chance, another opportunity to look in the mirror. If you answer yes to any of the following questions, chances are you have some degree of clutter in your home. Number one, do you own anything that you never use or no longer need, like clothes that don't fit anymore or old electronic devices? Just a reflection point. Number two, do you have a junk drawer of things you don't think you'll need, but don't ever use? So you're not sure you need it, but you don't use it. Number three, do you buy new items to replace ones you've lost in your home? Number 4, do you lack access to certain spaces in your home? Like you can't open the door to a closet or a bedroom in your home, or you can't park your car in the garage because it's so full of junk. Number 5, are you afraid to have house guests over because of the messy state of your home?
I don't know if you were keeping score for yourself during that. I think I got 1.5. I don't know where you are on that. I have a semi
Same.
junk drawer. Did you keep score?
Yeah, same, 1.5.
Yeah. I have a semi junk drawer, but there are separators and organizational bins in that drawer. And I do have some clothes where things fit better than others. I can still squeeze into them, or they're not. I'm on the fence post about it, but I know I don't wear them that often. I probably should get rid of them, but it's not horrible, and it all lives within the confines of my closet. So how's
Mhm.
that for rationalization?
I love it. I dig it.
So here's an interesting fact. I am curious how many will be surprised by this next comment. Clutter can even be digital. And I wonder how many people are going, yeah, at that comment. Maybe you never get around to clearing out your email inbox or organizing the documents on your laptop. Just looking at the amount of files you have on your computer might overwhelm you. I do try to delete when I'm done with emails and empty my trash folder as often as possible, mostly because I worry I'm going to miss something if it gets buried. So I like to have emails cleaned out as much as possible. I hate when I've got to hang on to, like, if I'm making vacation arrangements 6 months ahead of time, I keep all those emails from, the confirmation in there, which I hate. They're lingering in there for that long, but I need them. So anyway.
Yeah. I have too many inboxes, unfortunately. I'm grateful that Paige is the keeper of the real food recovery inbox overall. Like I check it often. I just don't always clean it out. Paige is a very good keeper of that inbox, and I'm grateful for that. Uh, but I've got 3 other inboxes for technically, including work and personal, that I have to work. Obviously, I have to keep my work inbox decluttered. Otherwise, if I'm on a Zoom meeting and somebody I work with shares their screen and they've got like 1,000 unread emails, I'm like, how did you get out of bed today? Like, how are you
Yeah.
functioning?
Yeah, exactly.
What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
1,000 unread, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand how, like, I get stressed if I'm over 100 unread emails.
I know.
I'm stressed. I'm
Yeah.
really stressed about it until I can get it down below 50. And sometimes they're unread because I'm waiting on something from someone. I've read them and marked them unread because I'm waiting on something, waiting on a
Mhm.
component, and I've got a lot of balls in the air at one time at work, which is not unusual. But if you've got 1,000 unread emails, so I had a situation at the beginning of this year, got displaced from my home in Jersey and had to go to Texas and the whole thing. And I lost between that and an illness beginning of the year. I lost 2 solid weeks at the beginning of this year. And it
Mhm.
was hard. And I got really far behind at work with emails, especially. And it was hard. And it was life on life's terms. But man, it was hard. And every time I looked at that inbox number, my heart hurt. I'm like,
Yeah.
I gotta get this. And then once I got it down below 50, I felt like a new woman. So now we'll start getting into the heart of our issue. It's so funny. Paige and I, we're very different people, but we are very much the same when it comes to this topic.
Yeah.
When it comes to food addiction recovery and how it connects to clutter, this is what we want to get to here. Like, why is a food addiction recovery podcast talking about clutter?
Right.
Well, what we are finding is that clutter impacts our physical space in an obvious way, right? It clutters it up. But some people don't realize that clutter can have negative mental health effects too. Of course, not everyone is affected by clutter in the same way. For instance, someone with perfectionist tendencies is likely to be more stressed out by clutter. Paige and I were not perfectionists, but disorder definitely stresses us out, as you've heard.
Mhm.
So the best place to start is by becoming aware of how much clutter you have and whether you experience any stress as a result. Then you'll better be able to discern if there's an opportunity for you to modify your physical space and improve your mental health. So I will say the person that I live with does not. They're not upset about their clutter. That is not even on their radar. And I had some folks who were very disorganized and they were stressed about it. Yet the clutter, it didn't occur to them to clear up the clutter. So there's two different kinds of people, cluttered people in my life. One that genuinely just doesn't care. And I will say this person who keeps everything and that there might be monetary value associated. When you ask him where to find something, he knows where it is.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like it's, oh, that third bin down, the blue bin, third bin down to the shelf in the garage, and that the little tiny thing you're looking for, there it is, in this 4-car garage filled with junk. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. I've often wondered about that too, is how are you physically able to just calmly be around?
Yeah.
I guess the word chaos keeps coming to mind because that's what the word I associate with a lot of stuff just sitting around. So anyway, those are all great points I agree with. And we know that ideally home is a place where we can rest and relax. However, clutter can make it hard to do that. One study found that women who reported more clutter in their homes had higher levels of stress, of the stress hormone cortisol throughout the day compared to women who had less clutter. It can also contribute to household chaos, which is associated with worsening parenting practices. I've seen that,
Mhm.
negative emotions and stress. Things were pretty orderly when I grew up. What about you, Jamie? I guess you've talked a little bit that your house was, for the most part, when it came to that, pretty orderly.
Yes, but it's interesting that kind of energy that comes with that. So I
Right.
grew up with divorced parents, so I was shuttled between two different homes for the first few years, and then I was more at my mom's after that. But my mom, she would have little piles of clutter here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she was very calm about it. Like she wasn't like, she wanted things picked up and she wanted, us to learn the value of keeping our spaces organized. She really did. Like she was a teacher and really believed that that was a important value. So I appreciate that. Um, and then she really didn't stress out if there were cluttered areas. She didn't stress about it. She just, if they weren't hers, she would remind whoever's they were, hey, clean it up. It's easier for everyone if it's cleaned up, and you'll find what you need. Or if she saw one of her kids becoming disorganized, she would point out, like, you could probably reorganize some things and have a little less stress in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That was helpful. My dad, unfortunately, was not that way. My dad was, it's his way or the highway. I keep a fastidious home. He was ex-military, so all of it was very, very organized, labeled, structured, a place for everything, everything in its place. And to top it off, there was an intense amount of stress coming from him onto us. So he
Mm-hmm.
would follow you around the kitchen cleaning up after you. He would critique your home when you were, as an adult, he would come to the house and critique.
Mm-hmm.
He would really like find something that was disorganized and not only say, hey, would you like me to help you organize it, which was always appreciated. It would be like, what's wrong with you? How did you let it get this way? Let me just show you what to do. Like it was very intrusive.
Mm-hmm.
So again, not not the way that I would deal with someone who's cluttered in my life as a
Mm-hmm.
person in recovery, but that's how he did.
As a side note, what did your mom teach out of curiosity?
She was a fifth grade teacher, so she was
Oh.
just general education.
My mom was a school teacher as well,
Oh,
and was like, I think, fifth grade too. And then she went to sixth grade math. She went to middle school, but yeah, for a long time it was elementary. I
mhm.
did not know that both of our mothers were elementary teachers. So
Yes,
very interesting.
yes.
So I digress. So actually, since I have proclaimed that I get nervous around clutter, my organization really kind of has more to do with my nervous condition than my need for order. I find it distracting. My brain can only focus on a limited amount of stimuli at a time. So if you're surrounded by clutter when you're trying to work from home, for instance, the clutter can actually make it harder for you to think clearly. Jamie, you work from home quite a
Mhm.
bit. I don't know if that is the same way that you feel.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I worked for the first 3 years that I was here, or 2.5 years that I was in Texas. I worked in a room that I shared the room, my office, and our workout equipment was in there, and it was sort of a TV area and a second TV area. And it was just a lot of stuff. And it felt, even though my little work area was very clean and organized, the rest of it felt like I was looking at a room filled with stuff.
Yeah.
Even though, again, it was all our stuff and I kept it as organized as I could, it just felt like too much.
Yeah.
And then I was able to move into this other room, just my work area, to move it into another room, and it's just like the most glorious, clean space. And there are things out that are beautiful to look at and that are very relaxing to look at and inspiring to look at, words and different things I have on the walls, and that's a lovely feeling. So I found that wherever I spend most of my time is where I want to invest the most into my eye real estate, my visual real
Yes.
estate. So what I'm seeing around me, what I'm feeling around me is really, really important.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling, most of the time, right? If I'm spending, like for instance, the mattress situation, I just replaced my mattress. I spend 8, 9 hours a night, hopefully, on that mattress.
A good
I
night.
need to have a very, very comfortable, supportive mattress. I spend easily 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in my office. I need to have a space that is conducive to a clutter-free mind and a clutter-free work environment. It just needs to happen.
Hmm.
So when I love this next point. When I was prepping this episode, I really loved the connection that's made here. Research shows that people with cluttered homes tend to procrastinate on
Hmm.
important tasks. That has been my experience, by the
Hmm.
way. You might have to dig through stacks of papers to pay the bills, or maybe you have so many piles of dirty clothes that it feels overwhelming to start the laundry. Plus, it's not uncommon for spouses, partners, or roommates to argue over whether one person's things are taking up too much space or not. Also my experience.
Hmm.
There even might be an added strain in a relationship that you have, primary relationships especially, if your clutter is an annoyance to the person you're living with.
Hmm.
If you're not inviting friends over because your home is cluttered, you might feel a sense of social isolation or shame, and this might increase your risk of loneliness. All of these things can take a serious toll on our physical and mental health.
I agree. I agree with that so much. And that so resonates with me. I remember when I was a young newlywed and on my own for the first time. And back then, there was no dishwashers. I mean, that was a rarity. I had a sink full of dishes and I was completely overwhelmed. I called my mommy and I said, I need you to come over. You've got to help me do these dishes. I am literally paralyzed with even just getting started. It was a freak out moment as just this young married person. It got bigger than I was. And she was a pro at getting jobs done. You know, those school teachers, they get things done. So I
Yeah.
realized that day that the hardest part was really just getting started.
Yes. So true. So true. And then I teach a lot. I'm a teacher in corporate America, and I teach a lot about work efficiencies. And one of the things that I talk about with people in the coaching that I do and the training that I give is all about, change management. And
Mhm.
change management, some of it is involved in change management. Some of what is involved in change management is organization, like the basics, whether it's inboxed, office, your workspace, whatever that is, your corporate facility. And I always tell people, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you just need to get started. Just set a timer for 5 minutes and just do something for 5 minutes. Commit to doing something for 5 minutes. And
Mhm.
every time it always works, and they'll go longer than 5 minutes.
I agree.
So a little
I agree.
for you. So here's the reason why we want to do an episode about clutter on a food addiction podcast. One study found that a cluttered environment combined with an out of control mindset triggered participants to engage in unhealthy eating behaviors. In
Mhm.
other words, research suggests that it can be more difficult to control your impulses when your
Mhm.
mental health and your environment are stressful or chaotic.
Mhm.
This is the big tie in to food addiction. In recovery, we learn how to control our impulses, and we learn to use the tools that we are taught in recovery to control our impulses. Our ultimate goal is to operate from a place of peace, and there needs to be order for that to happen.
Right. I just can't stress enough how much I need order in order to feel calm and to control my food cravings too. I could easily spin out if I'm in a chaotic place and overwhelmed and don't know where to start and I don't have control. In order for me to control my food addiction, I do have to have order. And we talk about this too in our food addiction recovery community at Real Food Recovery. People that have homes that are cluttered, we bring that point up a lot. Don't you think, Jamie, that there is a
Absolutely.
huge correlation between order in the home and success
Yes,
in
and yes. The people that I coach overall, not just RFR, but the people that I coach in my coaching life, the ones who focus more on just organization and decluttering of the home. I'm not saying the home has to be ultra organized. I'm saying that in general, they keep a clean, you know, minimally organized home. Their recovery is better every time. And folks who
agree.
have a very disorganized home, a very cluttered home on a consistent basis, have consistent issues with their recovery. It's
I
just
agree.
completely tied.
Agree.
So the question becomes again, we've talked about the problem for a while now,
Right.
guys. What do we do? What's the solution? So no doubt decluttering our entire home is a daunting task. But what if you tried breaking up your time into manageable blocks or go room by room? Maybe you dedicate 1 hour of every weekday evening to decluttering a single section of your home. P.S. You can do that while you're watching a show. Like you don't have to give up your downtime. You can actually declutter while you're watching something if that's something is to watch is important to you. What's interesting about this approach is that how we tackle any goal is in small, doable steps because it makes things much less daunting. If you
Mhm.
can't commit an hour, start with 5 minutes,
Yeah.
then increase to 10, then
Mhm.
go to 15.
Mhm.
Just make it manageable and just start.
Yeah. I like that point about you can do some things while you're watching TV.
Habit
Yeah.
stack, yeah.
Yeah, while between when we record and we release, there's usually a lag time of a few months, and it just so happens that last night was the Super Bowl and there was a commercial. There's lots of commercials. I thought, okay, I'll go unload the dishwasher. And I did a few, okay, I'll fold the laundry. It was simple to work in. But interestingly, I had a conversation with my youngest the other day. They're doing a bunch of remodeling, adding bedrooms and a family room in the basement. So everything is shoved into one section of the basement. And she said, I don't even know where to start. It's paralyzing. And it's what we've just been talking about. I suggested literally set a timer for 1 hour. And she said, I know, but I wouldn't even know where to address first. And I suggested pick one section and tell yourself, I'm going to work on this 3 foot by 3 foot area, and breaking it down into small, doable parts really, really helps with the overwhelm. And like we've said, I'm telling you, getting started is always the hardest step. And then the momentum will build. But just breaking it down, I can't do this whole room, but I can do this 3 foot by 3 foot square for
Exactly.
15 minutes or whatever. And you'll feel better, more invited to come back and do the next part.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I was just thinking how lucky your daughter is. Well, all of your kids, but how lucky your daughter is to have I never, my mom died and I was so young. I was still living on my own. I was dating my first husband at the time. I really wasn't struggling with any of these major, not major, but minor even
Yeah.
life things that you need a mom for. So I never had any of that guidance. um, After she
Mm.
passed. I didn't have
Mm.
anyone to go to daily to kind of talk about those things with. So your daughter is, I had to figure those things out on my own. Your daughter is very
I'm gonna
lucky.
remind I'm gonna remind all my children of that, how lucky they are to have me.
Tell them that it's at episode 58 that Jamie says that.
Yeah, and I have recorded proof.
Exactly. Another approach is to try making 4 piles of things. The
Mm.
first that you keep, the second you give away or donate, and the third that you throw away. And then again, think about a fourth, maybe if you are having trouble deciding, put that in your fourth pile. And you can decide at a later time. And it's what's interesting is most of the time when you put that fourth pile, let's say you put it in a closet or you put it in a box in a storage area, you'll find that those things that you couldn't decide on, they sit in that box because you really didn't need them, which
Yeah,
is the trick, right? That's the hack.
totally.
So you can also find charities. It's so easy to find charities, resale shops, consignment stores, or organizations that accept donations, or you can sell items to. You can take part in, there's big neighborhood garage sales and all kinds of auctions and other things that you can take part in. If you can help you, if it helps with your anxiety, you might feel like you're parting with your possessions as a way of serving others who will take those things off of your hands and really value them every day. That's the whole mindset of one person's trash is another man's treasure.
Agree. Agree. I love that point so much because something that you might be holding on to for years, maybe an old coat or something like that, if someone else can use it, my gosh, pay it forward. So I love that point. So try to organize items based on what you use every day. You'll want those to be easily accessible. For instance, in the top drawer of your nightstand or in the kitchen cabinet you use most often, a good rule of thumb is to try and keep surfaces like countertops and desks free of belongings. I agree with that so much.
Huge. Yes. Huge. I just had a little pile of papers that I needed to go through this morning on my desk, and I went through what I needed to go through, and I put everything off to the right that I just need for reference before it gets filed away, and I have the one thing I need to work on my desk right front and center.
Mm-hmm.
So the big key, this is the big key, stay on top of it. I
Mm-hmm.
usually do a quick once over before I head to bed. Yes. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually think I sleep better knowing I'll wake up to order. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons I even the first thing I do when I wake up is make my bed.
That's so funny that you say that because we had a big episode on that last week on our weekly wisdom about how important it is to make your bed. There's a colonel who gives some big speech on that, and that's what his whole speech was about, setting your life up for success. And the people that do that, you start by making your bed. So I agree completely with that. So that is me too. I stand up. I told you I pivot 180 degrees and I start pulling up my sheets, and nothing feels better in my day than getting my bed made. So the last thing I want to do is wake up to a mess. So yes, I agree with the once over before I lay down. It just feels much better. It's as essential as washing my face and brushing my teeth at night. So, and there are tons of TV shows, books, podcasts, and articles on decluttering. So simply start your search online and see what resources come up. There are also plenty of tips for getting rid of digital clutter, unsubscribing from email lists, deleting documents you no longer need, and organizing your files into folders are all useful ways of making your digital space easier to navigate.
There are many reasons that people hold on to things they don't need, use, or want. While you might judge yourself or others for accumulating clutter, remember that we develop emotional attachments to objects that make it often harder to get rid of things.
Right.
Just take one small action towards your clutter and allow it to grow from there.
Great point to end on, Jamie. And with a little bit of effort, you can begin to make small changes today. If you have any questions or comment on this topic, please leave them for us, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to know more about what we do at Real Food Recovery, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U, and we would love to see you there. Thanks, guys, for being with us today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.